Thank you. I think where we were, council colleagues, was we had received a budget overview from the treasurer. We had received presentations and input from citizens regarding the 2015 budget. And council indicated that it wanted to talk about the budget and ask questions, perhaps provide direction to staff. And so I will open that up to council. Who wants to start? Councillor Papp.
So let me start at a high level. I think the direction, the fiscal direction needs to be stated so that staff are clear on where we would like to take it. So just for the sake of discussion and for clarity and obviously direction, that we try and move towards a target of keeping all of our operating costs at the cost of living, or if not equal to what we did last year.
Okay.
So that's just at a high level, and then at least it's on the floor, unless, of course, we want to increase it to 20%, and then we'll be headlines. So seriously, I mean, we need to set out the financial parameters
Right.
of where we want to direct staff. They need to know from us, where do we feel comfortable, and what do we hear from our citizens is what is a comfort level, or for that matter, realistic level to achieve fiscal stability, I guess, to continue delivering the services we deliver, and in fact even improve in some cases. So that's I'm setting that out as a parameter.
Okay.
I've seen some municipalities have put out budgets, and I don't want to, at 4%, then they're coming back, they're looking at it. I think it's just too important of a topic that we got to be clear, because what we do now, and I think some of us have talked about it, and all of you agree, will have an impact as we start unfolding the development that's going on down the street. This will have a great deal of, how could I say, impact, hopefully positively. A, to generate the revenues that we maintain these buildings and continue to do all the services, that we don't jeopardize our financial health. And I say that because I'm not a negative. I want to make sure that we're optimistically looking at what we can handle within the framework of our fiscal setup.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. That's
Thank you,
all I have.
Councillor. So, just to build on what you've suggested, the region actually does this, or did this the
Yep.
last 4 years, in terms of setting a budget guidance target. Some years it was a hard number decided by council. It did move to a more policy number in the direction that you're suggesting, that you say in inflation or below. And then if there's any business cases or anything else, they would come to council for special consideration above that. And hopefully that, just as staff has done in the past, have done an exceptional job of getting us kind of at a very good number for overall increases. So that's your suggestion.
That's what I'm.
Can we talk about that, council colleagues, your agreement on that? And Councillor Kersey and Ribiak, and we may want to get the treasurer to chime in terms of what that number might look like this year and how it compares to the projected operating budget increase. But go ahead, Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this particular year's budget is, we need to look beyond COLA in terms of setting our parameters. I think the picture needs to be looked at in a broader scale. We've heard from our treasurer on several occasions that we need to be cognizant of our debt ceiling, and we need to understand clearly what projects we have inked and are committed to, what projects we have projected we might like to undertake. And of course, the elephant in the room is the community center. That is probably the single biggest undertaking this community will have taken on over the last 40 years. That's looming out there. We know from our feedback from our public that it's something that needs to be given careful consideration. We know what the needs are and the wishes are. Our job is to manage the money side of it and understand that we put ourselves or position ourselves in such a place that we can proceed with it, with or without higher tier government's assistance. At the very least, if we looked at a one-third formula, we would need to have enough debt ceiling preserved that we could undertake 1/3 of the projected costs. So I think this is a critical year for us to be starting to look and talk about those sort of arguments and see what the implications are. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we can either get to the bottom by curtailing spending, or we can increase the revenue side. And at the present time, the only thing that the ministry gives us the way to increase the revenue stream is through the levy, or through DCs or what have you. So I think we need to have an understanding, if we're going to finance that elephant in the room, if you will. We need to understand where we are today, what we foresee coming over the next couple of years as we work through the development process of that project, and understand the costs associated and what it might look like. So perhaps the treasurer might be able to bring us up to speed on that before we make a decision on what our limit should be. And if we still settle on the COLA, then we need to look hard at how we're going to spend the monies that we're going to bring in. And are we going to allocate any of those funds towards building up monies towards the community center? I think this is a critical year to be starting to make those sort of decisions. We've committed to servicing at least that first phase out there. Inherent in servicing that is to get the development off the ground, and I personally believe that a big part of that development is having that community center out there as a driver. So we really need to take a hard look at that. So I have to look to the treasurer to provide us some of that information before I would be prepared to endorse this.
Okay, thank you. Are you in a position to assist council at this point, Madam Treasurer, or?
Yes, certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. We've done some analysis just to provide some information tonight with respect to the debt, and I have been speaking about this quite frankly over the last couple of months in budget deliberations, because it is a critical year. And we're looking at the critical infrastructure, and being one of them being the community center. So how do we make that affordable in the debt repayment schedule? Well, we've estimated, as council has seen previously, I did a worst case scenario on just taking out the loan and then debenturing it, and what the impact would be on the ratepayers. So we've now put that into our debenture schedule. We still anticipate that debt would not be taken on until about 2018, just because of the timing of the building of the debenture, or of the community center, and also how you have to wait almost a half a year after the build is completed to get your debt. So based on that, we still are in a serious situation critically in 2018 with respect to our debt repayment limit. Worst case scenario, that is, we are funding over the $20 million of that community center, and that's the scenario that we have put into our debenture schedule for consideration. There are other projects obviously in there that are happening prior to it. Some of them being road improvements, and one of them being the Maple Acres addition is also in here, that is impacting on our debt repayment limit. So these are all things that council needs to consider before moving forward, because I can get to the tax levy side. Council has received what the impacts are on the tax levy, and that was a 3.17, just based on what's already council approved. The CIP is not really a council approved thing, it's just a recommendation. But we have, since that meeting, we have received information from WSIB too. Our rates are going up for the first time in a long time because of claims. So that hit on us this year will be another $40,000 on top of that impact that I've already provided to council. So just based on that, council is mindful that our budgets are very lean. We don't allow staff to go with core operating expenses that increase, except for those ones that council approves. So they're working with their last year's budgets. They're working to have new initiatives by efficiencies that they found. So these impacts are very difficult to draw down unless you can bring in new sources of revenue, obviously, or increase the tax levy. So those are all things that need to be considered by council as well.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Kersey?
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, Madam Treasurer, when you looked at the debenture schedule, are there items in that debenture schedule that are all of those items that are in the debenture schedule, have they all been approved by council to move forward? Or are there items in that debenture schedule that could be looked at and prioritized and determined that, hey, we're not gonna proceed with this at this time, we're going to shore ourselves up and look to a bigger future project?
Through you, Mr. Mayor? Yes, absolutely. The debt that we currently have as council has received in the last Cal report is small. Right now, what I have is the debt that we have and the proposed debt. So this is the proposed debt based on capital budgets from all the directors and all of those items that we say are going to be completed 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. Can those items move out so that we can get what I consider an economic driver in-house first and then help fund some of these other projects? Absolutely. And that's something that council should consider before capital budget approval. It's, from my perspective as a treasurer, it should be a small year capital-wise with infrastructure and keeping everything to the minimal until we decide on a community center, which will come later this year, and that will drive everything going forward with the capital budget.
More intense discussion.
Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so for clarity, at what stage of the game, Madam Treasurer, would you envision this council looking at those items and prioritizing them and saying no to this and yes to that? Would it be not at this meeting, but at a subsequent budgetary meeting that we would deal strictly with the capital budget and you would lay it out and say, this is projected, this is the debenture that's tied to it, and this would be the impact on our debt if we didn't do this, et cetera, et cetera?
Given that, we're already delayed in our process with respect to the election, and the budget is supposed to be presented to council in a draft form on the 19th, which is 1 week from today. We have gone through and did our criteria evaluation, and we've identified projects that still need to go forward but if council gives us that direction to say, okay, only the projects that are of critical nature and so forth need to go forward, we can bring forward a budget that is based on that. Otherwise, if council wants to have another discussion and go through project by project, I think that's kind of futile because we already know as a SMT what ones can come off this year if council gives it that mandate to take them off, and which ones that need to stay on. A bridge replacement, for instance, has to stay on because it's part of a critical infrastructure improvement. So those kind of things that we can move forward. There's other things that are still in there that we know that don't need to be done in this year. They can wait. And sometimes the wait is just, it's not being delayed forever. It's just waiting for other things to happen so that we can get this revenue in-house here and the growth happening to help fund all of those other projects. And that growth will help allow us to keep the tax levy at the rate that we've been doing over these years. So, okay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, it was a bit of a leading question, and you got your answer. Go ahead.
I'd be interested to hear what my colleagues have to say around that capital piece before we talk about the revenue side thing.
Okay, thank you. Other councillors? We've had kind of two approaches. One to say, to keep the operating, was focusing more on the operating budget, and the second to talk more about critical infrastructure versus non-critical infrastructure. I'm going to add, I see some councillors signaling, but I almost want to see it, and I think for those in the audience or those at home, we need to have something ahead of us on what that looks like. So we have a capital budget here with some ranking priorities on it, but we need to see that interplay between what Councillor Kersey's talking about, which is the debt. So the treasurer probably has it in her head because she has, I'll say, dreams about it. Dreams. So I think it would be fruitful for council to take a look at that and understand that a little bit better. Councillor Rybak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You had indicated before that I was on the list. I think Councillor Kersey has articulated pretty well most of the thoughts that I had, that this is a different year. What I was going to comment was that I think COLA is an excellent principle as long as nothing is changing. And if we're doing the same things that we have been doing up until now, then you would anticipate that the cost of those wouldn't change except for the efficiencies that we hopefully can achieve by learning more and being better at what we do. But essentially, freezing at COLA means we're not contemplating anything new or different. And since we are contemplating new and different in a pretty big way. I think it's pretty important for us to kind of unpack that whole vision that we have of what it is that we're doing and what we're anticipating to do, and to move from there. So I concur, Mr. Mayor, with what you've indicated, that we need to have something in front of us, and probably what we need to have in front of us are probably a series of projections from sort of the least unacceptable to the highest unacceptable, and everything in
Sort of a
between there.
scenario-
So that, yes, the scenario, so that
options.
we can put in and take out and kind of go through that exercise until we finally come to a balance that we would want. Because I think that, first of all, I think that anticipating the projects that we have on our list, COLA, which is essentially standing still, I don't think is realistic. I think there's a real expectation that people in this town will want us to spend no more than we absolutely need to spend to provide for them what they want. But I don't think anybody in this town has a vision that getting what we want is going to cost us nothing or nothing extra. So I think we need to come to that balance and do it as well as we possibly can. So I'm looking forward to an exercise in which we have the scenarios in front of us and a tool in front of us, perhaps an interactive tool of some kind in which we can plug in the project, take out the project, see what the impact is going to be, and kind of understand what it is that we're going to end up agreeing to at the end of the day. But again, COLA, I think, works if we're not changing anything, but we are contemplating change, so I can't see COLA as being necessarily the principle to go with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Treasurer, is there some sort of information, a tool, scenarios that you can get to us?
It's called spreadsheets.
Yeah, we have a spreadsheet. It's lovely. You can't read it because it's so small. But the only issue that we have with a spreadsheet of this nature is because we are debenturing our DC as well, and the DC components of any infrastructure. And that is funded by something else, so it doesn't impact. So we would have to make one that's just specifically to the tax levy, and then it's mindful of putting projects in and pulling projects out. You can absolutely do just by deleting a line. So it can be done that way. I just don't know how that would happen around a table, or just providing different types of scenarios to you with respect to what they would look like, given that, we are looking to have a debt repayment limit that can handle a community center. So if that's the mandate, or we can bring it to the table and have it up on the screen, and we can go through it and exercise together. It's up to council.
Just for a reminder, can we, is the DC included in that limit?
Yes, it is.
It is, okay.
And any parkland dedication that pays for debt as well.
So it sounds like you're recommending sort of a roll-up-your-sleeve, and others are recommending this, a roll-up-your-sleeve meeting on the budget to kind of talk about not only impacts on this particular year, but what it'll look like given the major projects that we might be taking on.
This year we're fine.
Right.
It's in 2018 that it becomes an issue. So I think the best way for council to see this is to go through that and understand where we are in 10 years from now,
Okay,
or where we want to be in 10 years from
right,
now.
right. Okay, thank you. I do have other councilors that want to add on this. Councilor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, it was mentioned that SMT has some ideas as to what can be and can't be prioritized and so on, what can be put off. I'm just wondering if the list that was just mentioned could be provided, giving scenarios of SMT's ideas of what can be put off and what can't be put off, and that if that can be, I'm sure this can be provided, but when could we look at it in order to speed up the process? Because as it was mentioned, we are behind because of various reasons, the election being one, but we really want to get our feet to the ground and get this down, but we need to see these numbers first. So I'm just wondering, when could we receive documents giving these various scenarios, and then perhaps give us a chance to digest it, and if necessary, call a special meeting for consensus as to what we should do on that. And that, that to me would be a logical way to tackle this.
Madam Treasurer?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Okay.
We could have the spreadsheets where we've got them. We've done a lot of analysis on this. We have everything ready. We have the different scenarios with respect to what was first requested by the directors. what we criteria evaluated and narrowed down specifically, and we can also provide one that's narrowed down even further for council's consideration, and you can see the different scenarios from, you know, what was first, how we scoped it down, and then what we can do to further scope it down, and then we can decide on a meeting. But I think it's critical to move forward quickly because it ties up it ties up the operating as well, and a lot of the initiatives that need to get going, so.
It's too bad we didn't have that today. Thank you. Councillor Durley, anything further?
No, that's good, and if we could get that, I'd leave it in your hands, Mr. Mayor, to see that we have an opportunity to digest it and take it from there as to the timeline you feel we can best expedite this process.
Okay, thank you. Others that haven't said anything, you're fine? Councillor Pat, back to you.
That's exactly why, Councilor Ribbiak, I used that scenario. You achieved exactly what we need to achieve. We need to huddle, have a special meeting with all those scenarios, and in tandem is to look at the impact of how the combination of the capital budget and operating budget will impact levy-wise, not only now, but into the future. I think it's critical for us to be able to see, because this is the year in which things are going to accelerate. The question is, can we handle it financially? Are our citizens behind it? We have to make sure that this is something that we can also not be caught. I don't think we are. I think you've given us enough warning. So the diagnostics are there. So the question is, what is the prognosis? What do we need to put into place to ensure that we achieve that plan? And as you say, whether it's 4 years, more importantly, 10 years down the road, because that won't be built out. I doubt very much if we are able to get the community center, hopefully in the next 18 to 24 months. But there's other drivers. We still have to deal with the Maple Acres Library. We have roads. We need to figure out what, because we've been through this before, and Council Durling, we've seen where we can go opposite ways and say, no spending at all. You know, we're not going to do anything. And then you pay the price. And I've lived through it myself as a civil servant and another, and it was unbelievable. So I think we're right at the good game stage, and I agree, Mr. Mayor, if you can call that. I think all of us would like to see participate that and take your direction from staff as well to help us set to you and say, this is where we want to see our fiscal target set. Does that sound fair? Thank you.
Just to build on one of the points you raised, Councillor Papp, as a point of interest, but this is what happened at the region.
Right.
Back in 2011 budget, it was considered that when there was a budget gap, that a solution was to put on a 1% capital rider to address the 10-year capital budget gap, and to put that on for 5 years. So each year, a 1%. Council of the day decided not to do that.
Right.
And now staff are recommending, not this year, but next year, so there is some time to deal with it. But to balance that, I think it's $250 million of outstanding capital that's in that 10-year budget when things come forward, like nursing homes that need to be rebuilt a little bit earlier than anticipated, or Burgoyne bridges that cost significantly more, that piece that they're suggesting is 1.4% each year for 9 years. So it is prudent to try to get it early, to deal with it, to have a realistic conversation about it. And I think, Councillor Papp, to build on what you've said, we're in a good situation now.
Yeah.
But if we do ignore it, that elephant doesn't go away, and other elephants that are in the room or at the door. So, but it's interesting to look at the treasurer's reports when she's given them to us, that there is that hump.
Right.
And that shortly thereafter, my reading of it anyways, is that it does dissipate rather quickly. So it's sort of a 1 year piece that we have to get over, given the considerable amount of work that we've been able to undertake. Some of that because of stimulus money, to take advantage of those dollars. So, so in terms of moving ahead, what I'm hearing council say is we do need to huddle. If the treasurer can circulate that information, which is really in a draft form, different scenarios, et cetera, to members of council, we can take a look at it, and we can look toward calling some sort of special meeting probably next week.
Sooner the better.
know if we can do any earlier, but we can call it as soon as we can. We'll circulate that and get that meeting and roll up our sleeves and talk about it.
And if I
Councillor
may
Papp,
add
and
a very
then
quick.
Councillor Kersey.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, and to incorporate that, as part of any changes in level of service that we want to increase, any staffing changes, we're going to be looking at some things shortly. People are very, very pleased, and I'll just use the example of the snow plowing. They're like, we started something that some of us thought we'd never be doing. But, as it starts to increase, it impacts on the ability to deploy manpower deployment, how we carry out those services. All those things have to be taken into consideration as part of redeveloping our capital infrastructure. So I look forward to that, and I'm very, very happy that this is the time we'll take to do that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very briefly, I wonder also, colleagues, if it would be worthwhile having the treasurer put a projection in there for a special levy that could be begun in this year and attributed to the future community center, and how that might look as we roll it out, if we roll it out over a 3 or 4 year period, so that the impact in 2018 wouldn't be this huge big dollar, but that we've gradually cracked the nut over the next 3 or 4 years. And I'd like to see how that would.
Some of that was contemplated or suggested in the report that came to us last June. I think it was a certain percentage, I forget what it was, $25, 50, yeah, Leisure Plan had suggested something kind of to step it up. I think it was a 25, 75, 100, and then to carry that sort of per average taxpayer. Madam Treasurer, do you recall that piece?
Yes, I recall that piece. We certainly could look at that, and that's part of the discussion at the special meeting would be around the operating levy.
Right.
Did you want me to do any forecasting on the levy
Yeah.
as well? Some of the budget requests, I have no direction from council with respect to the public open house with respect to the budget requests. So the impact right now is 3.17. It's going to increase a little bit because WSIB, and that doesn't take into consideration anything such as the library request and all the other requests that came forward at that special budget meeting. So I would need some direction from council on those items as well. I can give you what that would look like in a levy if they were
Yeah.
all included, and council can consider
We
that
need
as
that.
well.
Yeah, we need that. We need to see that.
And yeah, there's a major capital item. We received an item of correspondence on that. We should look at that with open eyes to see what that could look like. I think Mr. Mantle has indicated that it's possible to do the design, certainly this year, and possibly even take a stab at it, but we need to look at that number.
Okay, so
That was for Pelham Street.
Terms of energy, conduit.
I think that's the direction, Councillor Papp, that we're gonna
You want a
do
resolution
that.
from us?
But
Perfect.
the last piece, and I'm gonna see if the treasurer needs any more direction in terms of, again, looking at the scenarios, if we were to include these items in the operating as well, or some of the items in the
See
operating.
that.
And then the only other thing, is there anything that council, any questions that council had regarding other items that, so we never really had that discussion either. We've had as you said, Councillor Papp, want to start at the larger. Sometimes we get down to the granular, and we never had that discussion amongst ourselves. So are there any other items that colleagues want to raise on the maybe a little bit lower level at this point? Councillor Ribia.
Thank you. Actually, probably a lot lower level at the granular level,
Okay.
but there are two items that I'd like explored at least during the course of the year, if possible. One of those has to do with the ever popular subject of flooding, water movement. We have in our plan currently a 5-year look at municipal drains. I'd like us to consider doing that in a lot less time than that, say 1 year, so that we have a full coherent plan in front of us with what to do with municipal drains, if in fact it turns out that there is something that we need to do there. Indeed, I think it would be useful to have that for the other discussion we just talked about as one of the items that we would need to look at, because I think that water management and flooding continue to be an issue. An issue came to us over this past weekend with respect to the last rainstorm, for example, about another municipal drain that we hadn't yet had a chance to consider. So there are issues all over the town, and I'd like to know what they are so that we can plan for those properly. So that's one initiative that I'd like to do. And the other thing that I'd like us to look at, if it's possible to look at, is a study perhaps to examine how we might be able to meet the need for public transit, as has been articulated to me certainly, and I'm sure to others in the campaigns recently. Don't know whether we'd be able to come up with the funds to go ahead with it, but I'd certainly like to know what it would cost the town and its residents if it was a fee-for-service offering for to operate public transit along some routes that make some sort of sense. So we need somebody really to look at a study like that and tell us what we're really looking at, so that we can plan to do it or not do it or phase it in or whatever it is. But I'd like us to look at those two if it's at all possible in the coming year.
Yeah, if one looks at the standard SWOT analysis, one of those is drainage, and we have had some discussions about that. And the other is, I'm glad you raised the transit, because there's the possibility that, at least at a regional level, that will be spread out, and Pelham could have the opportunity to somehow join into that piece, although I think what you're talking about is a little bit broader than that. It's sort of within the town.
Within the town as well as among the towns. But just to re-articulate, the need that was expressed was a need on behalf of young people who said for us to go to school means either having to buy a car or leave home.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, neither of those is thoroughly acceptable, and people are kind of working around those kinds of practical problems. So there is a market out there for public transit to meet some specific needs, young people to go to school, but other people having other kinds of issues. And I think having a look at it and understanding what is a model of something that is practical and doable, and what would it cost us, I think it would be useful for us to have that model in front of us so we can go ahead and plan.
Just on that piece, Mr. CEO, do you want to comment on this? That we had a pre-meeting with Mr. Nafalk about some data, and this is getting in preparation for our meeting on the 20th about economic development. And he talked a little bit about transit and what some municipalities do. Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is some interesting data that we had a chance to have a preview of today with regards to movement of people, commuting times. We looked at some of the data sets even have the times of day people leave to go to work, where the majority of our residents are going, and where the majority of our workforce is coming from. And I think that there's a lot of useful information in there that's going to help target a little or specify it a little bit more on the transit piece. And I would suggest that be something that the Economic Development Committee would want to look at thoroughly in that venue.
Thank you. And I also understood that Mr. Nafalk said that in some larger communities, maybe when there's some more data there, like in Waterloo, I believe he talked about, that they actually sort of broke it down by neighborhoods. And said, okay, folks in this neighborhood, when they're doing a walking trail or when they're planning transit, how many are walking? How far do they go for employment? Do they go less than 10 kilometers, and therefore can they bike? An interesting idea to look at sort of what the community is doing, and again, the word granular, some of the data can get that granular. So I encourage us to ask him about that at our meeting next Tuesday, about some of that data, and that will be displayed as well, but certainly something to work on. Anything further on the transit piece? I don't know how we incorporate that any further at this point, Mr. CAO, into the discussion moving forward, other than keep it on P&P.
I would recommend to council that you keep it on as a priority issue through the Economic Development Committee.
Okay, thank you. And then to drainage, is there anyone? Councilor Riviac suggested that we ask staff to turn their minds to looking at drainage a little bit more in depth. Pardon?
Faster.
Faster.
Yeah, what's been proposed is a 5-year plan, and we would not have a cohesive plan for years, but I think that we're looking at the prospect of real issues over just a few years. I mean, if we have another spring like we had last year, we would have that kind of issue. So I would like us to know, if possible, more faster so that we can make a plan as to where to proceed rather than doing it piecemeal over a longer period of time.
Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to respond to that, council will know that in the strategic plan, preparing for severe weather events was something that was considered to be a high objective and priority. As I indicated earlier, staff has already met and started to work on specific initiatives in that area. We will be bringing information to council with regards to the initiatives that have been recommended in the interdepartmental teams, so that I think you'll see that there has been a great amount of importance placed on that particular issue, and we are developing over the course of this year initiatives. We have developed initiatives that we want to start to implement to deal with that particular issue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good.
Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The CAO has touched on, excuse me, on what I was going to come across, but we do have a qualified person in our CBO who really can give some attention to this, but I see it's already started, so what I'm saying is probably redundant, but certainly we do have the resources to explore that, and I'm sure we'll come up with something good.
Okay, thank you. Any other items? Councillor Pap?
Quickly, while through the Madam Treasurer and the CEO, also we need to have a discussion about staff and deployment. What do we need in the future? And I know that's the other elephant here. I mean, there's one thing in delivering service, it's who's going to deliver it and how can you deliver it. And I've seen a couple of times our staff have presented stuff that says, we need more resources, that. So we need to discuss I want to call a manpower plan, and maybe that's something that another position can put into place. So as we project down the road, we're looking at running facilities. We need to figure out, how we're going to do it, contract out. And I'm only using those as scenarios, but you have to be prepared for that. It can't be done adjunct, and I think, Mr. Mayor, you know where I'm going with this too. So that's a discussion that we should have at that time as well.
Thank you. Mr. CEO, comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are recommending some staffing, or we will have some staffing recommendations for council
We
on
have
that
that
very
as well?
point. Yes.
Good. Okay.
We will be making a couple of recommendations with regards to that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Good.
I'm going to just ask one granular question, one more granular question, and this is because I didn't see it in any of the reports that were going to be in the next meeting, but a member of the public asked me about it, and that is the Peace Park plan. I don't know, I can't recall that it's in the capital budget. Mr. CEO, who can answer the status of that? I think there's some hope in the community that some of that work could be done this year. So can we have an update on that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've looked at that project, and as part of the capital review that we did, we're not recommending any capital construction in Peace Park this year. We are recommending that the architectural study and design be completed. The priority indicated to us from the public was the public washroom piece, but it makes little sense to construct a standalone public washroom when we have deficits in this building. So if we can kill two birds with one stone by doing the architectural design for the public washroom and addressing needs of our current building and answering fundamental architectural questions like where's the best location for the bathroom, what existing infrastructure do we have, what can we tie in, etc. That would be the focus this year. But again, we're not recommending that we do any actual construction work.
Okay, I think that we'll have to, should council decide to continue to follow that path, I do note it's not in the Parks and Recreation budget that was presented to us. We'll have to communicate with the public on that, because there is some expectation, especially this being a 10th anniversary of the band shell, that there may have been some changes to that. So should council decide not to move ahead with that, then we'll have to communicate effectively. Anything further? Okay, so is there any other staff direction that's required, Mr. CEO? Is that pretty clear from council?
Clear as mud, Mr. Very clear.
Okay.
Very clear, Bud.
All right. So in terms of moving forward, the treasurer will be circulating information to members of council to take a look at. There'll be some information regarding drainage, there'll be some information, and we can talk about it in terms of economic development with transit. And really, we're gonna have a roll up the sleeves meeting and look at sort of really the projected plan, the 5 to 10 year plan moving forward and how it fits in. I think Ms. Mamalini has captured, hopefully, a lot of that discussion, so hopefully the CAO will be clear on the direction moving forward. Councillor Papp?
So very quickly, a special meeting next week sometime, couple hours, 2 or 3 hours, whatever it
We'll try
takes.
and do that. The other initiative that we were trying to schedule was the volunteer committees in relation to the strategic plan.
Yes.
And the CAO mentioned the strategic plan. It's not in the minutes that we just received because I think staff were still fine tuning that, but that challenge map was there and council needs to put its mind to some of those strategic initiatives as well.
Okay.
Okay. And I think you had circulated some potential times, right?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I did. I circulated a Google poll a doodle poll to councillors for that meeting next week. I've received a few responses. Perhaps we could combine the two, if that works. The suggestions were, I believe, next Tuesday, and there were two
Next
times
Tuesday we're
provided.
ready.
Tuesday night.
We need to do half
Tuesday evening, 4:30 and 6:30.
Yeah.
Start at lunchtime.
So we'll circulate that again tomorrow. Okay? Anything further?
No.
This is, okay.
Adjourn.
So this has been moved by Councillor Durley. I can't second this, so can Councillor Papp second it? That this regular meeting of Policy and Priorities Committee be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for Monday, January 19th, unless sooner called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried, including the directions.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Now we're ready for a 5-minute break. Stretch your legs. Thank you.
Has anybody got a power cord for one of these things?
I didn't. The first item is the adoption of the agenda. It has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Junkin, that the agenda for the January 12th, 2015 regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be adopted. Are there any changes to the agenda? Councillor Junkin, I think you had a change or a proposed change?
That is why I speak. Yes, item number 523, the extension of Cream Street south of Foss Road. Maybe we can move that to the front. The applicant is here, and he probably waited long enough.
Okay, thank you. And seconded
second
by
that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ribbiak. All in favor of the agenda, or the amendment, all those in favor? Any opposed? That amendment is carried. Any other changes to the agenda? I'm going to call the question on the agenda as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. The next item is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. That is any conflicts of interest that any members may have. Do any members have any conflicts of interest?
None, Mr. Mayor.
Note that in the minutes that no members have any conflicts of interest. So the first item we will deal with is item 532 regarding the extension, or sorry, 523 regarding the extension of Cream Street south of Foss. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you. It has been moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that the Committee of the Whole receive the issue sheet regarding the extension of Cream Street south of Foss Road, and the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that the town enter into a development agreement with Gary Groen to allow for the extension of Cream Street from Foss Road to approximately 560 meters south of Foss Road. Discussion? Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm interested in knowing a bit more about the alternative suggested within the report regarding extending Cream Street right through to Sumbler. In particular, I guess I'm interested in knowing whether there's any anticipated need in the foreseeable future for that extension.
Mr. Mann?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have not identified any need at this time. That's why the road was never open to begin with. Simply, there was just no need. There were no houses on it. not to say there wouldn't be, if it was opened up. That's the intent of extending it down to the south side of the abandoned railroad, which is part of the rail trail development that the town owns. So there hasn't been it hasn't been identified as a need in the future. Simply, there's a landlocked parcel at this location which is has few uses being located where it is, because you can't get a building permit unless you have frontage on open roads. So that's the purpose of this this process right now.
Okay, thank you. Counselor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's good information. As far as I'm concerned, I'm going to support this. I don't see any purpose in having a landlocked parcel that can't be made any use of by anyone. So I'm going to support this.
Okay, thank you. Others? Counselor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just curious as to how that lot was created. Like, there shouldn't be, I think the Planning Act says you can't create a lot unless there is access to it, so a landlocked, how did this happen? Or is it historically there, or what's going on? That's the, a question that behooves me, just in looking at the configurations here. I don't know whether anybody has the answer to that. It may be,
Mr. Mantle, you're
maybe
the
prehistoric in nature.
you have the institutional memory, perhaps?
Mr. Mayor, it apparently is a historical created lot. I think the Railroad Act is a natural severance for it, because it just simply looks like it was connected to Foss Road at one time, just from the plan view. So that's our assumption. But it's been there for a number of years. It's come forward in the past. The owner has approached the town over several times in the past about the value of the lot and wanting the town to extend the road. And we said, well, no, there's not a need for the town to extend it. You're treated as a developer. And this is this process has been used 3 times in the past to extend an open road to a landlocked parcel. So it's nothing new.
Thank you. Just curiosity got me, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's why I had to ask that question.
Thank you. Mr. Mantle, I don't know if there are other questions from council, but Mr. Mantle, I presume that this is the closest road to connect it to. You don't show on the map the distance between this lot and Sumbler.
I believe it's somewhat shorter to come from Sumner Road. However, my understanding is there's some environmentally sensitive areas
Okay,
that we cross, so this seems to be the easiest
okay,
way to get where we want to go.
okay, excellent. I wasn't aware of that. I was thinking it was shorter this way, so you surprised me with the answer. Thank you, Mr. Mantle, for that. Anything else? Councilor Rivak?
Just a quick question. I'm sorry I didn't raise it earlier. This road is going to provide another means of access to the trail that is being constructed along the railway, the abandoned railway passage. And I wonder whether that therefore represents a benefit to the town in opening that, and therefore whether some contemplation might be given to whether that's a shared benefit.
Mr. Mantle?
It certainly provides another access to the rail trail. I don't know if we actually looked at that that attribute. It was just simply it's there, and someone may use it or they may not use it. I don't. It may work as a loop for pedestrians. They walk partway down, then they walk, like if they're walking west to east, they could always turn and head north on the new road and walk back down Foss. Again, there's all types of alternatives for them to do that. But again, they certainly could stop there if they wanted and carry on with their walk.
Okay. Ms. Van Ravensway, do you want to add to that?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, many residents in Fenwick already use the unopened road as a path. It's clear, and you can use it as a path to get on to the rail line, the abandoned rail line.
Okay. Thank you. Does that help?
That does help. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? There being none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much for coming in. We look forward to that. Can that go to council? I guess it will. Will it go to council next week for ratification? Okay, so it'll be at council next week for ratification. Thank you very much. Now we will turn back to the regular agenda, and the first item is the water and wastewater budget. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Junkin, that the issue sheet regarding the 2014 water wastewater budget. Oh, I guess we have to hear the presentation first, so why don't you go ahead with your presentation?
Oh, yes.
It's just a brief presentation.
Time's up.
Mr. Mantle, just, where were those other three locations that it's been extended in the past? I know Sumbler was one of them.
Tumbler west of Church Street, Hay Street north of Mettler,
Right.
and Kimberly Court north of 16 Road.
Okay, Heath Street, north of Mettler, okay,
That was the Hansler property.
yeah, okay. I wondered about 16 Road,
There were four.
east of Effingham.
No, way west, actually just in from Victoria Avenue.
I was talking about east of Effingham, the dead end back into the woods there.
So on the other end, Councillor Junkin, 16 at the other end?
Yes,
On the eastern side?
yes.
That predates me.
Well,
Surprised you weren't also.
Possible.
I was just, I guess, Councillor Ribbiak's comment about folks using that area, and conceivably, somebody could park back there, that kind of thing. Some of that occurs on Sumbler, and some of that occurs on 16, if that's called 16.
Will there be a turning circle large enough to accommodate fire trucks, garbage
Yeah.
trucks, and anybody that wants to park?
Okay.
But if they're all privately owned lots, you may park in that circle, but you won't be able to get to the path unless you
Right.
unless you make a walkway to it.
I think the intention is to make the walkway, is that correct? Yeah.
Oh, is that what you want? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's-
Good. Thank you. So we were just doing that while you were getting ready. So, Madam Treasurer, turning it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, I just wanted to provide a brief presentation for council's information on how the water rates for 2015 were calculated. As you are aware, the report is under Corporate Services for Council's consideration. We do set the rates only after the water rates are set by the region because it drives a lot of our fixed costs from the region. They are charged based on fixed costs and consumption. We weigh heavily on the consumption side. As you'll see, our budgets are about 80% fixed costs. That's salary, the costs that the region charges us, and other water testing that has to be done and can't be variable. But however, we do bill out to the ratepayers. On the water side, about 28% is only fixed, and on the wastewater side, it's 40%. What we use as part of our impact on the rate setting strategy is the continued conservation. It's kind of leveled off a little bit, so we have that built into our consumption. The rainfall that is throughout the year, in 2014, we had a considerable amount of rain and flooding and all those things that impact on the sewer charges and the rates for the water. The region's approved rates, the region's rate did not change in 2015. The loss in the system, which we've done extensive work to mitigate and bring down over the last 5 years. And then the wastewater flows, they're based on a 3-year rolling average, so they impact us a little bit. There's a timing difference on the reconciliation of it, but we take that into consideration when we're doing our wastewater budget. And also the C.N. Watson study that was done last year, that'll continue to impact us because it really significantly changed the way that we do reserve transfers from the water budgets into the water reserves. So based on that, with the water rates, the fixed rate charge and how it's calculated, we have a total water budget this year in 2015 of just over $2.25 million. Again, it's about 28% fixed cost, and I'll show you how that $645,000 is calculated. What we get from there is what we have available for consumption purposes. And then we have some other revenues that are in that water budget. Those include interest revenues, meter changeouts, water shutoffs, penalties and interest and so forth. They total $144,500, bringing our revenue required for consumption to $1.464. And what we do there is then we come up with what we estimate the flow to be. And the flow is for water for us, and that considers everything with respect to water that might be lost in the system, and by lost I mean it's used for construction, it's water main breaks, those are all estimated, but they impact on our rate setting. So we have to accommodate for that. So based on 2015 for water, our water consumption is predicted at 1.1 million. And given that our estimated consumption cost of revenue are 1.4, the rate charge for 2015 will be 1.3275. It's exactly the same as 2014 rate and 2013 rate. Based on that, we have a fixed rate calculation that we have to do for wastewater. And again, it's about 40% for fixed costs, and that is 683,000. And that's based on the meter size and how many meters are on each size within the chart. And then we come up with a subtotal of 984,307. We have other revenue simply of $5,000 in the wastewater budget, and the revenue required for consumption is 979,307. Again, wastewater flows are a little bit different than the water flows because some have sewer and some have only water and so forth. So you have to tie all those pieces together. What we needed for our water rates for consumption was 979. Our water flows are estimated at just over 1.07 million, and that keeps us at 0.9119, which is consistent with 2014 and 13 rates. Here's a sample water billing, and it remains unchanged. I just put this year for council's consideration, for the public's consideration. Average estimated flows for the town of Pelham are somewhere between the 25 to 50 per cubic meter per household. So you can see what the cost would be based on the rates remaining the same over the years. And on that, just in the water and wastewater budget proposed rates, we are projecting an increase of 2% for the water hauler the bulk water station. And that's simply because we are investing some capital infrastructure into that with a new prepaid system that they can use. It helps. It's something that they've requested from us, but in order to fund that, we're asking that that rate be increased by 2%. And you'll see that as part of the report to council. Okay.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councilor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's great not to have a rate proposed any higher than last year or the year before. It speaks to a certain level of stability, which I guess we can really enjoy. But my question is, where is this going to go next year and over the years to come? What other sorts of things do you see happening that are going to impact on that? Or is it going to be just steady as she goes forever and we don't have to worry about any more rate hikes ever for anything? What do you see happening?
It's happiness and bliss, I think.
Yes,
but,
yes, that would be nice.
Yeah, I think part of the reason why we have this 0% is because of the infrastructure work that we did in 2009 and 10. That was a major overhaul of the system. There was a lot of waste in the system, a lot of water loss, and also creating a leaner budget process. There was a lot of capital items that are put into the operating, which are volatile, which would drive a rate up in 1 year and then have it be lower. So we worked with Public Works to really strip out the budget so that this budget is how you operate the system on a daily basis, and that's all that's included in there. So what drivers can send that spiraling up higher is cost of the region if they increase their cost significantly to us. But in-house here, we know what salaries are charged to the water budget, so we control it by controlling not only our salaries in water, we control our salaries in operating, because the two impact each other. So the other drivers are water testing, and that is consistently done over the years. So we've looked at every line item and said that we are comfortable that these line items are now in a stable format where, like our operating, there's no volatility to them. So we are confident that again this year we've had growth as well. So that increases the fixed charge because we have new meters that are entering the system that are increasing our revenues. So that growth has allowed us to increase some of the expenditure side as well to have that buffer that we might need for in case there was a potential increase. And it allowed us in 2015 again to keep that 0%. Can I guarantee it for 2016? No, I can't, but I won't suggest that it would be a 9% increase overall in 2016 either, because I wouldn't propose a 0% if I thought there was some trouble coming to the system. From what we've worked with in Public Works between our department as well, is that we're confident what we have in the system is a stable, nice number that we can control.
Thank you. So, if I may, Mr. Mayor, so you see the region charges as being the biggest risk to what we've got with the region charges for water?
Well, I don't think they're a huge, significant risk. I mean, there's 0.537 right now per cubic meter that they charge us, and we're charging 1.32 right now. So that rate is not, it would have to go up significantly for it to impact our budget. And we always have buffer room with respect to our volume that they bill us on is $1.4 million, or 1.4 million cubic meters. We're using a much lower number, and that's my conservative approach to making sure that we fit within what they're going to charge us for. So we're billing with a lot of estimated loss in the system because of water main breaks or construction projects and those kind of things, and that's how we mitigate any volatility to it.
Yeah. Thank you. Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Councillor Junkin?
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering, because I'm not on water, obviously out in the sticks here, how do we compare with other municipalities?
With a 0% increase?
Well, no, for what we charge, are the rates about the same, say, in Welland and what have, I'm just asking that just for curiosity.
Well, I'd like to say that our rates are the lowest, but I know for Welland, for instance, in Welland, we are lower than Welland. We are lower than most municipalities, I think, with water. Last year, we had a 0% increase. There was nobody else that had that.
Okay.
In the years that they had significantly larger ones, like the 14%, when there was a significant issue with the region, we came in at 6%. So we've always been considerably lower with respect to that, and it just comes down to, going back to 2009 when council approved the infrastructure with switch out of the meters, and that was the biggest impact that it had on this budget moving it forward. It's now payback time, essentially.
One other question.
Go ahead.
So your budget then is a break-even budget then for the water and for the services provided?
That's right. We don't budget for a surplus in any budgets. It always has to be a balanced budget. So revenues always have to equal expenses.
Well, that could probably explain why we're 10 million in debt. I guess what my situation is, or what I'd like to say, is that sooner or later, I mean, and when I say you, I mean we, right? We know that sooner or later, Mother Nature being what it is, repairs have to be done. I'm surprised, and I can say this because there's nobody sitting in the room here that's going to give me crap. I'm amazed, that's all, that we don't go 1% or something and build a nest egg for water main breakage, but that's never been done?
The water main breaks, the repairs are in capital, so
Yeah.
that's a whole other budget. But in operating, we do budget for a transfer to the reserve. So
Yeah.
I guess it's not a surplus, but it's saying we're going to take, I think in the water it's $350,000.
Yes.
We're going to put it to the reserve for all of those types of things. It's the repairs, it's
Yeah.
major infrastructure projects.
Yeah.
So we do budget for that. We do transfer that over.
But that 350,000 you just mentioned does not come from the water.
Yes, it does.
Oh, it does?
It's part of the water rate setting.
It's built in.
Oh, okay, very good.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything further? Councillor Kersey?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, very briefly. 70% of our water budget and 60% of our sewer budget are based on consumption. How vulnerable does that leave us in terms of, I mean, I'm assuming that when you've looked at the consumption, you've based it on a fairly long track record. Can you comment on that? Just, that's, to me, seems like the most vulnerable place in terms of running into a problem and being offside on our budget in both of these fields.
It absolutely is. I mean, the biggest problem is that we are mostly fixed costs, and we're basing it largely on the variable rate. So how, for me, how do I mitigate that? I set my target of the cubic meters that are going to be used in our system much lower than the region sets it when they're billing us. So we're capturing it by setting a rate that's a little bit higher, over the years, and that's what brings it back down to being conservative and not having a huge volatility. I mean, we have We have documented every volume flow from the region for the past 5 years. I think we have in our files in the system. We work with Public Works to help set what the region's going to use as a volume for the year, and then we calculate it for our budget purposes. And it is much lower, and it's to mitigate exactly what you're questioning there, so that we don't have that volatility.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple things about the region and the questions that councillors have asked. First, we did approve a status quo budget, essentially, as the treasurer indicated at the region at committee last week. And I have every reason to believe it'll be ratified at council this week. That rate is the same, but actually the region is expecting a little bit less in consumption. They actually missed the mark on consumption and budgeted too high last year. Not as high as they had in previous years when they were using a 3-year rolling average, but they did budget a little bit too high last year, and they're budgeting a little bit lower this year. But the actual rate is the same, but it actually, if everybody uses the same amount of water, or if people use the amount of water they budget, it's going to go up slightly. So that's how those things work with supply and demand. The other thing that the regional staff have worked with town staff on, and city staff across the region, is the idea of having another look this year. And what the regional staff indicated is they wanted to get it done by the end of Q3. Sort of another look at the whole rate setting. We have done very well, and there's not a lot of volatility, as the treasurer indicated. But some municipalities, because of their systems, because they haven't invested in the system, and they happen to discover a pipe that leaks $500,000 worth of water, or there's just other issues, they have severe volatility. So one year they're getting a rebate, and we're getting a slight rebate of $16,000 or something this year. And then the next year they're having to pay like triple that back to cover off, because there's such this volatility. A lot of it does occur on the wastewater side. So I'm very pleased that we're taking steps on the wastewater side as well to mitigate that, and that I'm sure we'll get into it later in the meeting, but the whole effort that we're undertaking with disconnecting leads into a portion of the sewer shed will actually help those flows on wastewater and provide some more regularity as opposed to storms. Because in essence, when the water goes into the wastewater system, we're paying for it, right? So if we can cut that off. So the risk and the topic, just for your information, council and staff, that's being talked about at regional council is the idea of moving from a 25 fixed, similar to what we have here, and 75 consumption model to a 50-50. Or maybe even to the other way, 75-25, but I think a 50-50. In that, council will recall, those that have been around the table a little bit longer will recall that the region tried to do that a few years ago, and everybody got up in arms. And instead, thankfully, that didn't happen, and the region did fix its estimating, and people are fixing their systems, et cetera. So that is a risk going forward, but I know the treasurer will defend our system and make recommendations in terms of what's best for our system to this council. But I wanted to let council know about some of those initiatives. The final thing, and maybe this is something that Mr. Mantle has already looked into, the region did make a policy change. It does have money for cost sharing on combined sewer overflows. So similar to our experience in the Hurricane Road area where the water comes together. Some municipalities deal with that problem not by doing what we're doing, which is taking proactive measures, but instead by actually building holding tanks and collecting all of that, holding it, and then dispersing it at another time when there isn't a storm. And the region has been cost sharing on some of those holding tanks. It's called CSO overflow tanks. There's some in Thorold, there's some in St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, et cetera, and Niagara Lake. We decided as a council, we'll probably try and push a little bit harder that, okay, that's fine, but that's just a Band-Aid. We really do need to get to the root of the problem. Now, the root is quite big for some communities, but there is that policy direction that we're going to try and put more money into some of the investigation and solving the root of the problem that we've put into. So there may be opportunities for this council to get some shared funding from the region on those, and I'd encourage staff to take a look at those opportunities, but also there may be, if there are other parts of our system on the wastewater side that need separating, that maybe we can use the money there as well. So I hope that's helpful for council and helpful for the treasurer, because there were questions of what's coming up in the future. Anything else from members of council? Sorry about that. It has been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Junkin, that the issue sheet regarding the 2015 water and wastewater budget presentation be received, and that the committee of the whole recommend to council that the 2015 water and wastewater budgets be approved. Any further discussion? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Junkin, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak. The Committee of the Whole received the November and December 2014 Corporate Services Monthly Report for information. Questions, comments? Councillor Papp?
Very quickly, thank you for the report, Madam Treasurer, through you, Mr. Mayor. Under payroll projects, I'm very pleased to see it. We've centralized all of the vacation, flex time, sick time, overtime directly, right? So it's all coming in. Just help me, maybe I misread this. It said once entered, it's automatically sent to the directors, so the directors of each department to make their considerations for approval? I'm a little lost there. Is that what it means?
Yeah, it's all automated, so the staff member goes
Right.
in, they put in whatever time they had off or whatever,
Right.
it automatically the director has to then log in and approve everything.
Got it. Okay, then I did read it right. Okay, thank you, that's it.
Thank you. Others? Madam Treasurer, the wording of the sanitary sewer backflow preventer number 14 there, I'm a little bit confused because it said the program, we have processed 13 applications. To date, there have been 45 residents that have accessed the grant. We counting residents or properties, or can you just?
Sorry, that's obviously a typo. It is 47 property owners that have accessed the grant to date.
So it shouldn't say 13, it should
Not
say
13.
47.
Right.
Okay, so maybe that can be
And it's kind of leveled
corrected.
off now. There was a rush for it, and now it's basically leveled off.
Okay. So most of that would have occurred sort of in
2014.
November, yeah. Okay, so can that be amended, just that it's 47? Okay, others? Anything else? It is, so I'm ready for calling the question with that slight amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, second by Councillor Junkin. I guess I have it here, but he didn't second all these, did he? Well, we're going to say your second anyways.
Sorry. His name is written in, but he didn't.
That Committee of the Whole received the issue sheet regarding the Singers Corners municipal drain, acceptance of engineer's report, and the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council to incorporate branches B, C, D, F, and G into the Singers Corners municipal drain, and to accept the engineer's report prepared by Spreet Associates dated June 30th, 2014, and the recommendations included in the report. Comments, questions? I guess my only question would be, it was a bit of a heated discussion we had. How did you resolve it, Mr. Mantle? Congratulations on that, but we had some heated presentations here and folks wanted to talk, so just.
They were primarily, I think, they had all been advised early on with respect to the cost apportionment. We've been in discussions with a couple of them. I think they were more interested in seeing where the money was coming from and when they were getting it. And late last week, one of them was here also, and he said, how soon do we get paid? So that seemed to be the real interest, the benefit that they were receiving for allowing the town to incorporate them as municipal drains. So I believe that's all resolved now with respect to Again, they're just looking for the money.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mantle. Any further questions, comments? I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? I'll say that's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, and I need a seconder for this regarding the Timsdale Estates subdivision. Moved by, a second by Councillor Papp. The sewage pumping station and the forced main ownership transfer, and the Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that staff be authorized to execute the transfer of ownership of the Timsdale Estates pumping station land and forced main to the region of Niagara. Questions, comments? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you, Mr. Mantle. You allude to the fact that the town needs an easement to gain access to the detention pond. Where would that easement come from? Would it be over the region's lands or the subdivider's lands?
Mr. Mantle?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it'll be exactly down the laneway that services the pumping station right now. It's the same sort of a setup that we have at, on Beckett Crescent with the sewage pumping station there and the stormwater detention pond. The region owns the driveway and the pumping station lands, and the town owns everything else, and we access the site by way of their driveway. This is a little bit different because it's more or less landlocked except for the frontage that it has for the laneway that leads back to it. But that, there will be a legal agreement between the town and the region that will have an easement to access our stormwater detention pond.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Durley, second by Councillor Ribbiak. Committee of the Whole receive the November and December 2014 Public Works and Utilities Department report for information. Questions, comments? Councillor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarification, the report indicates it's for November 2014 as opposed to November, December.
Yeah, there's two. I had the same issue.
There was a second report.
Yeah. Immediately
Oops.
following. It's okay. And there's some slight updates.
That's what I was looking for, the update. So I missed the other report.
Okay. Any further comments? Mr. Mantle, there's been some discussion in the community about Fenwick revitalization and those decorative lights, the lines coming down, et cetera. So it says spring 2015. Do we have any idea of when we expect the remaining beautification items to be finalized and complete? Just so that folks know.
The lights were ordered, I think, in November, and generally speaking, it'll take 2 months to get those lights, so they should almost be here. It's probably unlikely that you'll see any further construction out there with the winter weather until the springtime now, so that's our assumption that there won't be any activity until springtime. The contractors moved his trailer off-site, his trailer off-site, and likely laid off some of his employees that were working on the job until the warmer weather arrives. So that's our best guess, is that that's where we'll see activity. Like, it really doesn't make any sense for them to come out and just to put up lights. I don't imagine they can do the gas work, which would be part of for the gas-fired lamps out there. So it really makes sense to do the whole thing at once.
Okay. Thank you. And there has been some concern of some of the businesses in the area, members of council, about maybe it's the cold weather. They blame the construction, that they may, they're hopeful that their clients return. I think the CEO gave direction to staff to, Mr. CEO, can you just comment on that last week, what you did?
Same as Mayor, we put a notice on our website just indicating that all businesses are open and business as usual in Fenwick to help promote the fact that economic development activity continues to happen.
Okay, thank you. Anything further on that? Anything further on Mr. Mantle's report? Councillor Powell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, very quickly, Mr. Mantle, just curious, the sidewalk snow removal complaints, what's generally the nature?
It's generally tearing up sod.
Sod, that's what I
sort of
thought.
thing. The grass overgrows the side, or initially it's with that first snow clearing
Right.
of the season. The ground's not frozen and they peel
Okay.
grass every which way.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Durley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Getting back to the Fenwick revitalization, and I always want to like to celebrate successes. At the completion of downtown Fawn Hill, actually the precursor to Summerfest, we had a celebration that we're open for business again. I'm just wondering if we can't maybe put something together to say Fenwick's open again when this is all completed sometime this summer. And I put this up to to staff, and I think it would be a great idea to celebrate that, and that would I think really bring forth the idea that the work is done. Everybody come on out and have a look at it, and it's a positive thing for the community, I think.
Thank you. Great suggestion. I see Ms. Van Ravensway nodding her head. And even I think the bricks that are being sold are available till the 30th of January. Maybe you can give us an update on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The bricks, the last call for the bricks, we've been advertising it, and it'll be January 30th. So there's time to produce the bricks, and they will be laid when the contractors come back.
Okay, so there's another opportunity to come and see your brick, et cetera, and celebrate. So can we take that as staff direction?
We're already doing it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. Good to hear. Anything else? Mr. Mantle, the sanitary sewer inspection program, where's that at? Is it specific to the sewer shed here? Is that complete?
I think we're expecting the last of the reports within a week or so. I think they're out flushing, what they call today, I know they're out doing flushing in Fawn Hill. So with the flushing goes the video inspections, because the video inspection comes after the flushing. So I'm still guessing a couple of weeks away before we get all the results in, then review them and to see where we have our problems.
Okay, thank you. You'll keep council up to speed.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Anything further? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by, I need a seconder for this one, moved by Councillor Durley, seconded by Councillor Papp. The Committee of the Whole received the November and December 2014 Community Planning and Development Services Report for information. Discussion. Nice building permit numbers to finish off the year. Anything? Ready for calling of the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you, Mr. Glover. It's been moved by Councillor Accursi, second by Councillor Durley. The Committee of the Whole received the November and December 2014 Fire and Bylaw Services reports for information. Comments, questions? There being none? You, Councillor Accursi?
Very quick question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the chief. When we, our services go out and help an adjacent municipality, how are those costs covered? Is the helped municipality covering the cost of our volunteers, or do we cover that just as a courtesy?
Chief?
It falls under through Mr. Mayor, it falls under a mutual aid agreement across the region, so there's no cost associated with it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Actually, I received a nice note from the mayor of Waynfleet recently with the assistance that our service provided with their fires that they had at some colleges. So please pass those thanks from that community. It's been moved by Councillor Rybak, second by Councillor Durley. The Committee of the Whole received the November and December 2014 Recreation, Culture and Wellness Department report for information. Councillor Powell.
No, I just want to extend to, through you, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Ravensway, I smile when I read the farmers market. They were very pleased with the parking plan. All the things that we've been battling for years,
Can we put that on a headline
Found
somewhere?
that- I found that like a oxymoron, you know, considering what we went through, right? So obviously, we hit the right notes, and we'll continue to do that. Perfect.
We're starting a lunch market.
That's what I would do, lunch market, breakfast market.
Breakfast market.
Counselor Durley?
Also very pleased, Mr. Mayor, to note the success of the outdoor Christmas market. It was well attended by over 1,700 people, and it was a real fun night, and everything went well. And kudos to staff and volunteers who helped do that. It's just great to have these events to, you know, keep our community together. That's great.
Thank you. It wasn't as much of a shiver fest as it was the previous year, so.
You know, everybody liked my coat. Anything further?
There be, oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just some expansion, if you don't mind, through you, Mr. Mayor, regarding the theater series that is coming to the old Pelham Town Hall. Who, what, how often? Just some additional detail, if you don't mind.
Ms. Van Ravensway?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we, now since we have somewhere to hold events, we are featuring two theater productions. It's a production company called Smile Theater, and they go around, they put on a 1-hour theater to mainly seniors, so that's why we're holding it in the afternoon. And actually, the response from the community just by sponsorships has been excellent. We've already received a donation from Pleasant View Funeral Home, as well as providing all of the beverages and that for the first theater production. So we're hoping we will be selling tickets, and we're hoping that we'll be able to continue this. This is like a pilot project, but already it seems to be well accepted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just again, for some further clarification, are we talking variety skits or drama or high opera, or what are they doing?
They have, we haven't chosen the actual production as yet. They have a couple that we can
Oh,
choose
I
from,
see.
so
Okay.
there will be more to come.
Thank you. So what I understand is that Smile Theater is kind of the agent and they'll,
That's right.
okay, got
Correct.
it. Thank you. That's clear for me. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you. Great news. Others? Excellent, thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Keep up the great work and smiling. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Junkin, that Committee of the Whole receive the issue sheet issuing marriage licenses, and that committee directs staff to prepare a bylaw for the next regular meeting of council, indicating council's support of issuing marriage licenses. Discussion.
I'm not. I'm not.
Councilor Ribbiak?
I was going to say it, but I'm not.
Mayor, I think the idea is an excellent one. It balances, as the report indicates, the fact that we put out death certificates and we go through all that portion. It seems like this is an excellent balancing activity. And apparently there's some revenue associated with it as well. So I'm certainly going to support that. And besides, our clerk wants to do it, and I'm not the one to say no.
Been to Vegas too much, Councillor Pat.
What goes on there, I don't agree. And Daytona.
Anything further? Sounds like a great initiative, and I think the clerk had indicated that staff were putting together something, so thank you for this. We look forward to that bylaw. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. It's been moved by Councillor Junkin, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak, that Committee of the Whole received the November and December 2014 Clerk's Department report for information. Council, anything, council? Okay. Gonna call the question? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Silence means approval. It's been moved by Councillor Junkin, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak. The Committee of the Whole received the November and December 2014 Chief Administrative Officer's Report for information. Questions?
We'll get them next time.
Next time?
No questions this time.
No questions? I'm going to ask you this. Talk about the item at the top of your second page there about the Public Art Master Plan.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the East Font Hill project, along with the larger community, but this has really been a result of the East Font Hill project of trying to find a commonality of themes in the architecture and landscape, and it was thought that we could have a community charrette process that would invite the public in to have input into what that cultural theming or art would look like. And we started to investigate the issue. And one of the things that ties in very nicely with the East Font Hill plan is the idea of a public art policy. We are proposing that we undertake a public art process that would extend for the entire community, and that we develop some protocols around what exactly public art is, where do we put it, when do we want it, how do we allow it, who decides, all of those sorts of mechanisms, so that we have the tools in place to be able to deal with public art and public art components in all aspects of the community.
Thank you. And then Kunda Park is mentioned here. There was that park that was suggested. Can you give us any updates?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we are recommending that we, in my report, I've indicated that there's no legal justification from Ministry of Natural Resources in light of the condition that they placed on the development and on the town's construction of its park. We are recommending in the budget again this year, in the capital budget this year, that we proceed using Parkland Dedication Reserve Fund to start the design of a park for that particular area. And we're looking at a nature play area as opposed to a plastic and metal hamster wheel for children. So we're trying to be very creative and innovative on this park that would really tie in to the overall neighborhood and provide that community benefit.
Okay, thank you. Anything further on the CEO's report? Appreciate those updates. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Finally, it's been moved by Councillor Junkin, seconded by Councillor Ribbiak. This regular meeting of Committee of the Whole be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for Monday, January 19th, 2014, unless soon called by the mayor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.